Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Glasses Guy Hates Another Thing. Stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bald Guy approves of that cold open. Gerald is here with you on another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast, and over on the other side is, as stated before, Glasses Guy being held over for the winter. What's up, man? How are you?
Man, I can't, it's like I can't see anything at all. It's like I haven't done this ever before. Ever without the glasses. Now with the glasses, like I'm in. I'm good.
I know, yeah. Your reputation precedes you now. You know, it's so funny. I do all the YouTube videos I've been doing for the last few years, and I'm always getting the vitriol thrown at me. I was so excited when they came after you last week. I was like, finally, Glasses Guy.
I feel
is here.
like finally again. You know, the first time I ever felt like I made it when I was doing movie stuff, Gerald, way back in the eons ago in the YouTube days of Epic Film Guys, when Justin still lived near me and we did video stuff.
Yeah.
We got death threats on our Transformers, whichever Transformers movie came out in like 2014 review. Can't even remember which one it was. It was the one with the dinosaur ones in it, whichever one that is. And
that's so good.
We got death threats on that one, and man, it really felt like we had made it. Like we were just getting bombarded with death threats in there. And now, once again, because I'm insufferable. It's wonderful. I've arrived, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here. It's good to be here. Now I can never take the glasses off though for a review. Like now it's got to be part of the brand.
Glasses stay.
Glasses,
and I can't grow hair. I can't grow hair. You can't take the glasses off. This is the whole thing now we have going here.
It's true.
On Two Piece.
It's true.
But movies are subjective. Film criticism apparently is not. So I don't know what to say. But with that being said, we're talking about a new release that I don't know, man. I kind of want to talk a little bit about this when we get into the discussion of the film because it had a theatrical release in like the second week of November, I believe, and then it played in the theaters for a few weeks, and then it dropped on demand, like literally out of nowhere. They were like, "We're going to put it on demand next week."
Yeah,
and I don't know why studios do some of the things they do, so we'll talk a little bit about that too. But we're talking about Alexander Payne's The Holdovers tonight for the main review, and starring Mr. Paul Giamatti in a role that he's getting a lot of praise for, as is the film leading into award season. So we'll be talking about that one tonight. But before we get there, Nick, let's do it, man. One big question.
You gotta ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
Clint, you had your time in the sun, all right? That was last week. Get out.
Clint's here every week.
Every week.
As is Kelly Kapoor.
Can't get rid of him. He's basically moving in.
What a duo. Kelly Kapoor and what's Harry?
That's Dirty Harry, yeah.
What a duo. I got one for you, man. Let me throw this at you, okay? Because I just thought of it.
Ooh, okay, I'm ready.
Put a little twist on it because I feel like if not, it would have been kind of an easier answer. So I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult.
Okay.
So this is not necessarily a spoiler for The Holdovers, but the premise of the movie is Paul Giamatti's character gets held over on campus in the winter, kind of snowed in, with ultimately what ends up being two people, right? Divine Joy Randolph and Dominic Sessa's character, okay? So It's the three of them kind of secluded on this college campus. So, Nick, if you had to spend 2 weeks kind of snowed in with just two people, all right? Now, it cannot be people that you know, all right? So two, like,
Gerald's off the list then. Woo! Woo!
Yeah.
Woo!
I knew you were going to pick two of me, so I wanted to take that off right away.
All right.
So two celebrities or, people that you've admired from afar or whatever. I don't know. But not anybody that you hang out with on a regular basis. No family or anything like that. So who would you want to spend those 2 weeks with? Kind of held
Man
up there?
alives. That's probably like a rough list of people to pick from. So I'm not a celebrity person. Like I don't really care about ever meeting celebrities or not. Mostly because I'm like in my 40s and I never have. Like, but it's not something that like really attracts me. Like people will go to conventions and stuff. Justin does this all the time. And I always used to like razz him for it. Cause I just don't get it. Like, it's just not my thing. Like, it's hard for me. Cause like, I can't pick a celebrity either. Cause it's like, what celebrity would I even care to like? And this isn't just you meet them and you're randomly there with them. You're stuck there with them for like weeks,
Yeah.
like while you're snowed in for the holiday, or you're left just staying there with them or whatever.
Well,
I'm
I'm
just like,
forcing your hand though. You got to come
God,
up with
who would I
something.
even like? Who would I even care to?
You wanted to pick me and Dan so bad, didn't you? You wanted to do live
I
stream
was
from the cure
see. I
over
was
winter break.
I was gonna say you and Dan too. Yeah, that was gonna be 100% it. Because then me and Dan would kill you day one, and then
Okay.
be free of you the rest of the time. And then me and Dan would just play
Eat
video
my
games the rest of
corpse.
the time.
Yeah, sure.
Eat your corpse. Yeah, we don't have any other food.
Sure.
Oh man. Let me. I want to hear your answer. Let me think
right, I'll
on
tell
it
you
while you come back to you, because I want to hear your choices here.
I'll give you mine, but there is a asterisk on my answer. So the reason I'm picking these two individuals is because
You're gonna say Tay Tay, aren't you?
No, I thought about that, but let me explain why I'm not picking Tay Tay. I'm picking two individuals. So the reason I picked these two in my head is because we would have unlimited access to films. We'd be able to watch movies, 2, 3, 4 movies a day, whatever. So it would be almost like a camp for like movie lovers, but I would want Quentin Tarantino there to show me some of his influences and favorite movies of all time. And then I thought, well, let's get a female perspective in there too. And I love Greta Gerwig, obviously did Barbie this year. So let's get Greta Gerwig and Quentin Tarantino and myself, and let's just watch movies for 2 weeks. That's it. That's my answer.
Okay.
Does that help you at all or not?
God, it's so. I'm like such an
Could you imagine 2 weeks with
antisocial.
Tarantino though? I don't know, man.
See, here's the thing, because what I'm also trying to take into account is like, well, Tarantino would probably be annoyed as hell that he's trapped
Yeah.
in this place with you for 2 weeks.
What? I take offense to that, sir. What do you mean?
All right, G, I got it. I didn't totally just steal this from you in that piece that Dan's going to totally cut out of the episode in editing. But Eli Manning and Michael Strahan. I'm a big Giants fan.
Hey,
There you go. Get him in there, and we could just talk about football for weeks on end. I'd love to hear all the stories of, all that kind of stuff. That'd be cool.
I hope Eli at some point during this 2-week films you being tackled by Strahan though in the snow. Just a spear tackle.
It'll happen day one, and I'll die, and then
that'll be it.
End of trip.
That'll be it.
End of trip.
All right. Well, there you go. That's one big question. Nick, I'm sorry I stumped you. That was my one big question. What do you got for me, though?
So mine's also holdovers adjacent. Not who, Gerald, but where. You have to be trapped somewhere for 2 weeks. Can't leave. You're there over the holiday break. Where do you want to be?
I'm going to go. I mean, I could give a different answer if this is too easy, but I'm going to go Disney World.
Disney? Really?
Right? I mean,
Disney?
2 weeks at Disney?
Disney at the holidays, especially?
Yes. What are you, nuts? I mean, come on, dude. I mean, the Disney princesses are there, right? Or no?
Now listen. This is
it's just me.
This is how I show my disapproval for you right now. This is
glasses.
Yeah,
Don't take the glasses off.
Audio audience. They missed the whole impact of that, but I had to take the glasses off at him, so he
Do not
understands.
take the glasses off anymore.
He
This is
understands.
serious
I'm
now.
sorry. Please forgive me.
This is serious now.
So sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, I mean Disney World is the first thing that came to mind. I mean the place is magic, dude. I mean, you would never get bored. The 2 weeks would go by like that. I mean, you'd always have something to do.
You'd have something to do. All right, it'd be called standing in line everywhere because you'd be at Disney at the holidays. Yes.
I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I'm going to stick with it. All right, I'm going to stick with it. I'm a Disney adult. I'm into Disney World.
You can
All
have
right.
it.
What about you? Where would you want to be held up at?
I'm going to go completely opposite because I'm a foodie. You know me. I love food.
Yeah.
Give me, and I don't even have like a name of a place because I feel. Don't make me take them off again. I'll do it. I will do it.
Man. Unlimited Happy Meals. Let's do it.
All the toys. I want every toy in there. No, I would pick like a smallish Italian town not a huge city, but like
Oh,
some place that's like moderately sized, like small, just so I could go to like just all those beautiful like Italian restaurants, like all
okay.
that fresh, like homemade pasta. Give me 2 weeks if I got to be stuck somewhere. If I could just
Yeah.
go on a road trip, I'll just take a road trip and eat my way through Europe. I'd be fine with that too.
Okay.
Check out all the
I like
amazing
it.
food. But yeah, but you park me in like some small like Italian town where like it's oh no, I gotta go get fresh homemade pasta again.
Hmm.
Darn it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Be
that
rough
checks out for
sledding,
you.
man. Be rough
That
sledding.
checks out for you. For me, I would just, do the Olive Garden and then, it's the same thing.
Wow. Man.
I was wondering if that would get the glasses off
You just
again, but
want to
no.
get the glasses off. Now it's gonna just be a test for you to see if you can't get the glasses off.
All right, guys, that was one big question. And now it is time to get into the review for The Holdovers. Nick, every week we start out our review by giving our score out of 10 up front before we even say one word about the film or our thoughts on the film, and we have not discussed it with each other in what we call the early score reveal, sir.
Damn it, this always happens. I think I'm gonna score and then I never score. It's not fair.
Is it fair?
Yes.
Nick, before you show the score on camera and mention it to the folks listening, you're a huge fan of Alexander Payne.
I am.
Although you were a little down, no pun intended, on his last film.
Wow.
See what I did there?
The cheap
So I'm
wordplay is
interested-
gonna get the glasses off too, all right?
So I'm interested to see where you landed. Me, I'm just kind of a casual admirer of the guy, and I do love Mr. Paul Giamatti. Have a soft spot for him as an actor. So I'm not going to probably be as intense in my dissection of the film as maybe you are, but let's do it, man. Here, I'm going to count you in. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
3, 2, 1. Out of 10, you're looking at a
9 out of 10, baby.
7 out of 10 from me, a 7 out of 10 here, and a 9 from Nick.
Trying to class it up, I
which-
went with the playing card today,
Which,
and not the.
yeah, that really, I struggle with the math already, and seeing the playing card come up,
that's
I
throwing
didn't
you
know what
off.
to do. Like, I'm thinking about too many things at one time.
That's 16,
Jesus.
Gerald, divided by 2.
So that's
is
an 8.
Okay, now you
That's
got
an
it.
8 from the piece.
You got it. Lock it in.
Cumulatively.
Lock it into your brain. You got it?
All right. So 7 from me, 9 from you. So obviously, Alexander Payne is back in your good graces. This is spoiler free at the top here for the first few minutes, guys. We will let you know when we get into spoilers for The Holdovers. Nick, highly, highly rated from you. What did you love about it, man?
Literally everything. This again. Alexander Payne's my favorite filmmaker. My favorite film of all time was directed by Alexander Payne. I love the man as a filmmaker. The downsizing of it all, I'll forgive him for that because this is a true return to form. He is best. You think about films like Nebraska, Sideways, Citizen Ruth, Election. Like you could like any film in his filmography, really, outside of downsizing, is him just taking a few like just common slice of life people and throwing them into different circumstances, and just like he has a way of like things not feeling like they're scripted in a way, things not feeling like they're like it's a film, like it's something the film is, as much as like it could just be you randomly rocked up to somebody's house in somebody's neighborhood and just turned on a camera for a while. Like he has a way of getting real authentic performances out of characters. The buzz is real for Paul Giamatti this season. He is phenomenal in this film, unbelievably good performance, and Divine Joy Randolph as well, amazing. But I think honestly, I think Dominic Sessa, I think the kid steals it for me. I think that performance, like especially like we'll talk about it in spoilers, like what that character goes through, like the journey that character goes on. And I think that kid's performance, like the anger and the confusion and the frustration, and the way that character lashes out as a result of it, it's so incredible. And he knocks it out of the park. Sensational performances all around from the three mains in this cast. It's a huge return to form to me. This film was tailor built for me. Like it's obvious, like this film would have had to try really hard for me to hate it. Like Downsizing did. Downsizing tried really hard to make me hate it. And like, but I mean, he's just got a way of just of capturing these such beautiful, authentic characters. I loved it so much, man.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Alexander Payne is one of the greats, especially that's currently working today. And my favorite movie of his goes kind of far back in his career. It's Election.
Yeah,
with Reese
Election's
Witherspoon is
so
probably my
good.
favorite. I love that movie. I rewatch it frequently. The Descendants I really like.
Yep.
But you know what? You're right. I mean, what he does is he really just kind of, it's almost like he's just some bystander that's just kind of filming what's happening. And it's like nothing overly dramatic or crazy, explosions or anything that's going to make you stop and gasp. It's just like normal life kind of shit that's happening. And he does it again here. I liked it. I like the winter setting. I like that it's kind of a hidden holiday movie. Like it kind of ends up being a little bit of a
It is.
Christmas movie.
It
Really.
is. Yeah, it is.
So it plays as a good holiday watch for sure. So I'm glad we're reviewing it at the time of the year that we are. But I don't know. I mean, Paul Giamatti, stunner. I mean, he will most likely get nominated for Best Actor this year, and I hope he does. I mean, I don't know if he can win it with people like Cillian Murphy from Oppenheimer in the race or whatever, but I mean, I think his performance definitely deserves to be recognized, and he'll probably get some wins out there on the circuit this year
For sure.
for the Holdovers. And it was a marriage that they really made in Sideways, and you see that kind of transformed here into this kind of down on his luck professor who is kind of grumpy and just doesn't really have a desire to connect with anyone, any other human. He just kind of is used to being alone and being this prick to the kids and the school or whatever, and he makes this kind of inadvertent connection with Dominic Sessa's character, and it's really beautiful, man. I mean, I got some hints of like Dead Poet Society in there a little bit too, like Robin Williams' character kind of connecting with the kids, and I kind of felt some of that coming through there in the influences as well. I wasn't as high on it as you were, but I mean, I do think it's a really good movie, and I think it's one of the better films this year, and it's one of Paul Giamatti's best performances. I don't think it's his absolute best, but I mean, it's really, really good. So I agree with you, man. All right, Nicholas, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go ahead and peel back the spoiler wall. All right, so we'll go ahead. Anything going forward, guys, if you have not seen The Holdovers, come back after you see it, and you don't want to get spoiled. So we will be talking just full-fledged spoilers going forward. So, Nick, when it comes to kind of Alexander Payne's style, and we kind of already talked about that, it's kind of a slower, kind of methodical, just everyday life kind of gameplay, if you will, throughout these movies of his for the most part. I just want to ask your opinion. For me, I mean, a 7 is not a bad score, first of all. I did really like the movie. But for me, I just wish that, honestly, we had gotten more meat and bones in Divide Joy Randolph's character. What was her character's name again? I'm sorry, I got to pull it up here. Mary. I wish we'd gotten more from Mary's character, because you mentioned Dominic Sessa kind of stealing the show for you. And I mean, all three of the main players were, I mean, I'm not going to argue. I mean, they're all stunners. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. But I really found myself like seeing her on camera, Mary, wanting more of her, and she would just disappear for long periods of time. And then when she came back, like at the Christmas Eve party later in the movie, there's a really powerful scene where she's remembering her son who had passed away in Vietnam, right? I believe it was Vietnam. And I don't know. I just felt like we should have had more time spent with that. And that was like one point off for me, because I really loved her character, and I didn't feel like they spent enough time with her personally. That's just my personal, whatever. And I think that she's probably in the conversation, too, for supporting actress, and deservedly so in this film. She'll probably at least be in the conversation for a nomination
For sure.
this year.
Definitely deserved to.
Really, all three of them are in the conversation for their respective roles. So do you get what I'm saying there in terms of like her screen time and the dedication kind of to her story?
Yeah, let me pitch this to you, G, because one, I had a couple of small quibbles with this film. One of them is that when they go to Boston, they just drop her off at her sister's house and leave her there. Mm-hmm. And we don't really we get like a couple of brief scenes. Like there's a scene where like she takes, I think she's taking some of her, like her son's old baby clothes and like leaving them there and like gifting them to her sister. Because her sister is pregnant. And I like that. And I still wanted that to be part of the movie, but I don't like like she wholesale disappears from the movie for
Yeah, right.
literally like 20-25 minutes or whatever, and like we only check back in with her briefly. I would have liked it if she would have stayed part of that group, because what this film does, like at first it holds a whole bunch of other kids over, and then they all piece out to a ski trip except for Angus, it's Dominic Sessa's character, and Paul Giamatti's character, and Mary. All
Hmm.
three of them are just stuck there, you know? And it kind of forms this like unwitting little family unit between them. Angus is
Hmm.
really, really rebellious because he's very, very hurt and upset that he's been left behind, and that nobody's going to come and get him. They're just leaving him home and everything. And Paul is really, really upset because like he's got to be stuck here, and it's clear, it's very, very clear that there's a bitterness and an anger behind Paul Giamatti's character.
Sure.
Whatever it is, whatever thing in his life that's happened to him, where he has given up on people, pretty much. Like he has
Mhm.
straight up given up on people, like wholesale. He has no faith in humanity. He has no faith in really anybody or anything, really.
Right.
And that's why he's so bitter and grumpy and angry and things like that. And then you have, of course, Mary, who, her son recently passed away in Vietnam, and I like I love, like, once you finally get them three together, like those are the strongest parts of the film, is just the little family things, the
Oh
little
yeah.
bits of bonding that those characters do together. And when they take her out of the movie, when they kind of remove her from the movie, because I mean, obviously Angus, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens when they go to Boston and things like that that we have to, look into. But I don't know, like that's one of the
I get
things about the movie that really, I was like, why take her
because
out of it?
they talk about a lot. I mean, he goes to visit his father, which is what you're talking about,
Yep.
who's in like a mental institution, and we obviously get a lot of time spent with Paul Giamatti, but his character's name is Paul as well in the movie, and his kind of we hear them talk about his past and why he got in trouble when he was Angus's age, and they mention different stuff. So we get a lot of time, I feel like, or a lot of exposition and dialogue dedicated to those two characters' kind of backstories. But I just felt like that was kind of missing for Mary's part, and I felt like, at least me personally, like her story was the most kind of like heartbreaking to me. I don't know.
Oh, for
Was
sure. I mean,
really I was
well,
just really kind of invested in her story, and I just didn't get any time with her enough time with her in the movie, and that's
I'll
all I was really saying.
I give an even split, because I mean, what happens to Angus is just as bad.
Hmm.
I mean, like
That's true.
I eh, I mean, just to think about, like, about that family dynamic, and it's why I love his performance so much, because he tells the audience, like the audience is told he's dead, like the audience is told, and like we hear a phone conversation about like missing his father, and then he tells Paul Giamatti's character at one point that his father's dead, so we as the audience assume his father's dead. But then, like, when they rock up at that mental hospital, like that was like the big oh crap moment for me. It was like, holy cow, his dad's alive,
Right.
and like his dad has basically been locked away in an institution by his mother, who has now then run off with somebody else
Right.
and like married them. And then like that, I love that performance so much
I
from
did too.
Dominic Sessa, because, like, I mean, picture being a kid in that scenario,
Hmm.
like you've basically, like, your father's been, like, your father has struggled, has like had mental issues and things like that, so he's basically been locked away in a home, and you've been basically left to rot at this academy. Like, your family, like, you're supposed to be home for the holidays, you're supposed to be together for the holidays, and your family's left you and abandoned you there. All that pain, like all that confusion, all that frustration, and all that anger, like, is there in that performance. And I mean,
Sure.
that's gutting, man. I mean, that doesn't
I agree.
undermine what Mary's going through. Like, Mary's going through the grief of like burying her child.
Right.
which is also just absolutely terrible. Like both of those characters, I mean, we don't get any backstory on any specific things that happen to Paul's character,
No.
but I think we can definitely surmise, just like from a few different interactions that he has in the film, that he hasn't had the greatest go of it either. But I mean, man, this is what I love about Alexander Payne movies, though, and about performances in Alexander Payne movies, because God, he presents broken people in such a real and authentic way that it immediately will connect you. And I think that's the great films, really truly great films and great characters connect you to something in your life and some part of your life
Sure.
where like you've experienced emotions like that, and you can connect into and draw a parallel from that. And I mean, like I said, I mean the pain and the heartache and the anguish in Divine Joy Randolph's performance, the anger and the confusion in Dominic Sessa's performance. I mean, it's just it's magnetic. Like
Yeah.
it's so good.
So there's a point in the movie that it kind of like breaks from what it had been, where Dominic Sessa's kind of running through the halls and he goes in the gym, even though he's forbidden to do so. And he ends up like breaking his arm and,
He
just
just
kind of
dislocates his shoulder.
dislocates his shoulder. He's like just acting silly or whatever. And he ends up dislocating his shoulder. So Paul takes him to the local hospital to get it looked at. And the whole time, Paul's like, you're going to get me fired. Like, I was supposed to be looking after you, like, this and that. And they're kind of arguing about whose fault it was or whatever. And there's a point when Angus is like, kind of lies to the nurse and fabricates that Paul's his dad and, whatever. So they don't have to fill out the paperwork. So the parents never find out about it.
Yeah.
So they do that. And that's kind of the point in the movie where their bond starts to build from that point going forward. And I mean, again, I like this movie, okay, but I'm just telling you, I don't know that I felt like it was kind of abrupt because Paul was a very standoffish, I almost felt like he kind of hated the kid, honestly, prior to that scene or whatever. And then all of a sudden they're kind of bonding and they connect. And, some of the things that happened along the way I thought were very, beautiful. And I thought they were cool. Like them little things, like when they go for the burger and the beer in the restaurant.
Yep.
But Paul still says, well, you can't have the beer, so he still kind of plays the father figure. He doesn't give in to some things. But
Yep.
I don't know. How did you feel about the kind of pacing of the movie, I guess is what I'm saying, from them being kind of enemies to like all of a sudden it's almost like a father-son bonding kind of thing?
I mean, I think Paul's character, like we already talked about it a little bit, right? Like this is clearly a character that's bitter, that has given up on humanity, has given up on other people, has given up on forming any kind of a meaningful connection with other people. Because and here's why I think like there's the interaction that he has in the movie like a couple different times with Miss Crane, one of the other teachers at the school, who's a waitress at the bar when they go to the bar, and they do all that kind of different things like that. And I think you see that sequence there where like it feels like they're making like a little bit of a connection. She's so genuine and so kind,
Yeah.
and so nice to him, and he actually, you can see in like those moments, you can see him just a little bit taking the walls down.
The hope.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you could see him just a little bit taking
Yeah.
the walls down just a little bit, and then finds out that she has a husband or boyfriend or whatever else.
By the way, one of the most devastating scenes from Giamatti in this whole movie is the look that he gives on the couch.
It's so good, but gee, take that feeling. Like that's like this is a character that is screaming for just one thread of
for somebody to kind of reach out
humanity,
to him, right?
of connectivity to somebody. And in comes Angus, who is this kid who is again angry, hurt, confused, alone at Christmas and everything. And I think they find in each other kindred spirits who are kind of doing their best to survive a world that
Yeah.
maybe they don't understand, maybe they feel like has forgotten them and kind of left them behind. Like that's why like that scene in and of itself, when like she doesn't even reject him, like she's just very kind, very polite to him, and like you can sense a little bit of attention and a chemistry there and everything like that. And then it's this sliver of hope. I think this character has been screaming probably for years, decades even, for some kind of a connection. And then in here comes this kid who, you know, with how big of a bastard Paul is to not just him but all of the students, like
Yeah.
really overly difficult on them and really overly critical of them and everything like that. I really think that he's just been dying for some kind of a connection to another human being in some way, where it's like I said, I just really, I think that character's begging for it. So I don't think it's too abrupt. I think it's just when Angus first lies there in the doctor's office or
Hospital.
whatever.
Mm.
And you know, we have the scene, like you mentioned, the scene at the bar. Like we have that scene where he's like, you know, trying to he puts his dime on the pinball machine because he wants the next game on the pinball machine, and then
Yeah.
he ends up making the dudes mad. And like, well, I think one or both of them are Vietnam veterans as well. And so you have that sequence there where then he stands up for him. These are two characters, and here's what I really feel is I feel like these are two characters who have never had anybody there for them, or maybe
Right.
have been forgotten or left behind, or like, you know, just left alone for so long. They
Yeah.
just they've been screaming for this connection. And I think it's the way that they find it and the way that they kind of slowly thread it together. I think it's beautiful. I really
Yeah.
think it was really great.
I get that. It's a tragedy in a lot of ways too, especially if you're looking at it through Paul's point of view, because
Is it though?
uh, in my mind, if I'm looking at it through his perspective, because, well, let me explain why I would say
Yeah.
that. And this is off the top of my head, but the reason I would think that as we're sitting here is because, kind of like what you're saying, he's been alone. He is alone. He's a loner, you know. And for all intents and purposes, it seems like he doesn't really necessarily mind that. Like he just kind of is pushing people away with, especially like the students and stuff, with his language and the way he treats them, and just kind of dismissive of today's society. And he's just kind of that, old man on the yard shaking his fist at a cloud, right?
Yeah. Very
Uh,
much so.
in the first half of the movie, at least. And then we, all the things that transpire in the film, you feel bad for him. At least I was devastated by Paul Giamatti in that one scene at the Christmas party when he realizes that, what's her name?
Miss Crane.
Miss Crane. When he realizes Miss Crane is actually with someone, whether that's her husband or whatever, I don't know. And they, they kind of kiss and they're kind of affectionate to each other. And he just turns around. It was absolutely devastating because we've all been there where we have a crush on somebody and we find out, oh, well, they're already with somebody.
Yep.
And you just know how he feels. He's just so devastated, and he doesn't say anything. He doesn't cry. It's just like it's just this kind of subtle realization as he's sitting there in her house at this party. But and then he does have a bond with Angus though, and you feel a bit of almost like a father son kind of thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to the end of the movie, and ultimately, he has to give up his career in order for hopefully a better future for Angus, right? But at the same time, he kind of loses that connection that he has with this boy because he's not going to be there at the school anymore. I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's a movie. I mean, who knows? But I mean, it's presumed that they lose contact and they have that last kind of goodbye, and that's it. Kind of like, thanks, man, like for everything, and that's kind of it. So I say from Paul's perspective, it's a tragedy because he's where he always has been, despite the beautiful connections that he's had with certain people throughout this movie.
I'm going to disagree with you, and here's why.
Okay.
Because, first of all, I disagree with the assessment that the character likes to be alone. I think that he is alone as a defense mechanism. I think because things like what happened to him at the Christmas party are probably things that have happened to him so much in his life that he's just formed this defense mechanism. It's easier to keep people away from him than it is to let people in. So he
Sure.
prefers to be alone because it's easier than getting hurt. So
Yeah.
I really feel like
I
that's
agree with that.
part of the character's DNA. And I think that the character, I don't think it's a tragedy because the character has never, ever grown at all in his life. We know that he went to Harvard, right? We
Yeah.
know that the character went to Harvard, but then after he went to Harvard, like he went to Barton, that was his high school. After he left Barton, he went to Harvard, never finished at Harvard, never actually finished, went back to Barton. They gave him a job as like an adjunct professor, like not even as a professor or whatever. And he's been there ever since. He's never done anything in his whole entire life. And that's why I don't see it as a tragedy, because here's this character who has lived inside of this cocoon, this shell for so long. And then this connection with Dominic. And yes, like I would love, like in my headcanon, for them to somehow stay in touch. Like after the movie ends. I don't think they would realistically, but I like that headcanon of at least trying to, pretend that they would. But like,
Yeah.
I really, really think it's like Matt Damon and Robin Williams characters in Good Will Hunting. It's like, he's got his number, but will those two characters probably ever talk again? No, probably not. And I'm fine with that. But like, I think that because Angus is able to re-spark some kind of humanity within Paul, to the point that at beginning of the movie, Paul never ever would have ever sacrificed himself for a student, ever. Never ever would have made that choice
Right.
to take the bullet for the kid, and be the one that ends up, getting fired for it. Beginning of the movie, the fact that he grows to that point over the course of the movie, and now
Right.
he actually has to, for the first time ever, go out into the world.
Okay. So
And
you see that as a positive, like,
such a good thing for that character.
like,
That's what's made him so repressed and crotchety and lonely, like all these defense mechanisms, because he chose to go back to this place where he was probably the only place he ever felt safe in his life.
yeah.
And maybe not. And I mean, that's just making a lot of assumptions and things like that. But like, I feel like it finally is forcing this character to come. He has no choice now but to leave his shell. He has no choice but to get out of that shell. And for the growth that he goes through in this movie, it shows that he still has humanity. It shows that he still has the ability to love someone and form that connection. I think that's beautiful, and I love that for that character. That's why that's probably why I gave it a much higher score, because I love that ending for that character.
Yeah, I need to reflect on it. I do really respect everything that you just said, and I can see that perspective. I guess as I was watching it, which is kind of what I'm commentating on now in my thoughts. As I was watching it, it was a bit of a downer for me, because I was like, well, he's alone going out into the unknown, and like, I don't know. It was just a sad ending for me as I'm watching it. But now hearing your perspective, and like, if I want to reflect on different, possibilities for that character, I kind of get what you're saying. But in real time, as I was watching it, it was kind of a bummer, because I really grew to love and appreciate the relationship that he had with Angus.
Yeah.
And I was kind of even thinking, like, before I saw the ending, or before the parents came to the school for the meeting or whatever, but like before that happened, I was even kind of thinking like, okay, this is going to play out at Barton, where Angus kind of forces him to, grow as a person, and kind of realize that these kids are not as bad as he thinks they are. And, I'm not saying necessarily he's going to have a bunch of friendships with all the students or whatever, but he's going to be a little more like understanding and compassionate, and, kind of carry on his career, but as a different, more charismatic, kind of compassionate teacher. And then when that happened, I was like, oh shit, well, I don't know what this guy's going to do. Like, I felt bad for him. Like, I felt, again, I get what you're saying. And honestly, I kind of hope that's right. Because at the time I was just kind of like, man, this is a bummer. I really like this Paul dude. He's a good guy. He's just kind of been in this cage his whole life, and so anyway, that's kind of where I'm not saying that I'm wrong or you're wrong or anything like that. I just, as I was watching, that was kind of my perception of what was happening, and it was kind of a bummer for me at the end there.
Hmm.
Which, I mean, didn't hurt the movie for me overall. I just would have loved more of a kind of definitive, like, this guy's going to be okay, which I guess is not really Alexander Payne's style, so I get that too. But he likes to leave it a little more open for interpretation there.
Yeah, and I mean it's Paul's story, so I mean Paul's the one that gets, I think, the most satisfying ending. Mary, I mean, I think Mary is still too lost in her grief. I mean, as she would be, I mean, she
Yeah.
at least has joy, and like her sister's pregnant, and her sister's going to have a baby, and the baby's going to have the same middle name as her son. Like,
Right, right.
I really really like that she's still going to have like the family connections and different things like that. But I like I really would have liked to see like, and I mean, granted, like I think it's too short of a time frame to really maybe focus on the idea of like she's not going to get over that grief or anything like that. But I'd at least like to like have seen her like, I think, well, okay, I guess maybe the most growth that character gets is like the janitor kisses her on the cheek at New Year's. That's probably like a pretty
Well,
good
what
amount
this
of growth
movie
for that
does,
character.
yeah, and what this movie does that's brilliant is that it's. Oh, I mean, I don't know. I'll ask you if you agree with me on this statement. I'm trying to think of how to phrase it, but the movie is a 10 out of 10 at its best when the three of them are together.
For sure.
When the three of them are sharing
For sure.
the camera together, and most of the time that's at like at the dinner table when
Because
they're
it's like
having this kind of
that
like,
great little family that they form together. Like, how
yeah,
great is that? Like, he goes and he gets this
and
random. He's got these random books. What was the book? I can't remember what the book was now.
oh yeah, and he had like a whole
He
box
had like a
full
whole
of them.
box of them
We
at the
found
end of the
out
movie.
later.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
basically he gives wraps it for him
yeah,
and gives it like I love that whole little Christmas thing. And then like like their dinners like like started to evolve into like be like this more thing. And then
right,
they're back at Mary's place watching the newlywed game and like
right.
all that. Like it's so good. Like I love that
Yeah,
the interplay between
that
those
those
three
were the
characters was great.
best.
Yeah,
Those were the best moments in the
yeah,
movie for
yeah.
me, and
I would agree 100%.
I just felt like at certain points it turned more into like Paul and Angus, and then I'm like, where's Mary? You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like it was still good, but like
yeah.
I just really like the dynamic between the three of them.
I wonder if
I'll
that's
just
us putting too much expectation on a supporting character versus like, and I guess that's the real question is, was Mary just a supporting character who
yeah.
had a little bit of development and had a little bit of rounded edges to the character, or like could you make an argument that Mary's more of a main than not?
I
I
think
guess that's really the argument.
I think she's definitely a supporting character, at least the way it played out.
Yeah,
But I think that, I mean, they're an ensemble though, to me, I
for
mean,
sure. True.
even some of the side, characters that show up here and there are really good in this movie. Like I thought the young kids were really good. The little Asian boy and the other kid that were like, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old or whatever. I thought they did a great job in the movie too.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think it's a great ensemble. I think, Paul Giamatti obviously is the lead and he's taking the lead and
Yeah.
doing great things here. I would not be surprised at all. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, if all three of them get nominated, if the movie gets nominated, and if Payne gets director as well, I would not be surprised at all, because I feel like this is the type of movie, and I mean, Sideways was a film that had a lot of similar pedigree to this film in terms of like pacing and kind of the development of the lead character. And I just see it, man. I see it. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I think it would be deserved, because I think everybody in this movie, including Alexander Payne, really cranked it up and did the best thing they could do here, man.
Yeah. See, the film will get a token nomination, but it'll never have a chance at winning. I
Nah,
don't think Payne will get nominated, as much as I love him and
I
I love
know.
the direction of
It's
this
one of
film.
those like,
It
yeah,
like I feel like he won't get nominated, but I do think there's a strong chance that the cast, because this is really the kind of movie where it's like it's all about the cast. It's all about their
yeah,
performances and what they bring to the material and all that kind of stuff. I
yeah,
think the character that I feel worse for, like the worst at the end of this movie is Angus, because Angus is
yeah,
still enrolled at Barton and he's made this connection now with this person Like, and he's kind of seen that, like, not everybody is going to abandon him. And I really think that that's something that that character really, really needed, that he's going to have people that are going to be there for him. But ultimately, he also still has just the world's crappiest mother and stepfather ever.
Yeah.
And I still
And
feel for that kid just being still in that situation
me
at
too.
the end of the day.
Me too. I think about that, and I actually thought about that too at the end of the movie as the credits were rolling. Actually, and I saw it in the theater, and I know you did too.
Yep.
And I was kind of sitting there as the credits were rolling, and I kind of thought about that, like putting myself back in the mind of like a 17-year-old,
Yep.
and trying to think of like how easy it was. I mean, I use the term easy, but easier than it is now to kind of shake things off, and kind of move on with your life. And I kind of thought about it from that perspective too, where I feel like it would have been kind of ironically a little bit harder on Paul's character because of his age and his life experiences and the lack of those connections at his age. Whereas Dominic Sessa's got his whole life in front of him, kind of at least thinking about it from that mentality. But I did think about that though. I thought about like, how are these two characters going to be affected by this break in bonding that they had throughout the movie? And I just don't know. Again, I mean, I didn't hate it, but it's one of the things that did somewhat bring it down for me a little bit, was just not knowing kind of frustrated me. Like, I want these guys to be okay, and that kind of left me kind of unfulfilled at the end a little bit.
I think without this experience, I think Angus turns into Paul. I think Angus becomes as bitter and disillusioned with life as Paul has allowed himself to become. And
Interesting.
I think without this experience, like, that's the kind of the path that he would have headed down, or worse, like he would have ended up in, the military. And that was like the early 70s. So Vietnam was still raging. So he definitely would have
Yeah.
ended up going over to Vietnam, probably getting
Yeah.
killed and things like that. And like, or, because he was such a troublemaker and like he kept acting out, he would have ended up in jail or something like that.
Right.
So I think that, yeah, I think that he, maybe not in terms of place, but in terms of like mindset, like his mental, like kind of mindset, I think that that's where this character ends up,
All right.
is as Paul at the end of it.
Well, there you go. In summary, before wrap up real quick, I think Divine Joy Randolph was my favorite part. I just wish there had been more of her.
Yeah.
Her character was definitely supporting, and I just wish she would have been more of a central focus in the movie, like the other two characters were. I felt like, but all three main players absolutely knocked it out of the park. The 1970s aesthetic, I'm a sucker for. Alexander Payne nailed it. It was, very like muted colors, and it was very cold, and of course it was cold too because it was winter. But I mean, like the feeling was very cold, but then you had those brief moments of like levity and brightness with the Christmas stuff and the party, and then Paul goes out to get a tree with like literally no ornaments on it at the end. Which I thought was so cute that he was trying to make that memory for Angus too, which was really cool.
Yep.
But yes, all in all, it's a great film, and I think it's a film that should be in your rotation at the holidays, which is interesting. It plays as a really cool,
It really
kind of like
does.
Thanksgiving / holiday Christmas movie, So for me, it's a 7, and from you, it's a 9. So any final thoughts on the Holdovers, buddy?
I mean, it's the kind of movie that, like, movies like this are my favorite types of movie, where like you connect with these characters, you connect with these, because who hasn't felt bitterness in one way or another toward life and toward like things that have happened to them in life? Who else hasn't felt scared and confused and alone at some different point in their life? Who else hasn't felt rejected? Who else hasn't felt like different kinds of grief? And like, that's, I think the great thing is, like, I obviously have never experienced the kind of grief that Mary has, but like, that's the kind of different thing, is like there's different things to connect to each of these characters in the film. It's like, this is, like I said, this is my favorite type of movie. It's going to have to always try really, really hard to get a bad score from me. So I just this one just an absolute home run, knocked it right out of the park. Absolutely love
So
it.
one of your favorites of the year, probably, yeah.
Easily.
All right. 9 from Nick, a 7 for me, which puts it at an 8 overall from the piece, which is very highly rated from some of the movies we've been doing lately. because Nick's been bringing down the scores of all the ones I love. So
All those horror movies, baby, bringing down that average. I've only
Oh, man.
seen one slasher ever. You know that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, what do we expect? It was your
Yeah.
first one ever. It was your second one. Your second one, you said. All right, that's our discussion on the holdovers, guys. I am absolutely over the moon thrilled that Nick has agreed to cover with me next week on the show Saltburn. We will be talking about on next week's episode. I've seen it twice already. I can't get enough of this fucking movie.
Ooh.
That doesn't mean whether I love it or hate it. It just means it's like literally fascination to me. It's a fascinating film, and I can't wait to see what you say about it as well. Nick, we wrap up every episode. We head over to the comments section and see what the fans had to say. Now, we throw them a question out there because we're covering the movie that we're covering, and we see what questions they wanted to ask us, buddy. So we got a few this week in relation to the holdovers. Nick, you want to grab one out, man, or you want me to pick one out here? Let's see.
Oh, I mean, it's too easy for me to pick Jared Taylor's question, so I'm going to ignore it.
Ooh.
I'm going to take...
It's not that. Is that?
About Schmidt's my favorite movie of all time, Gerald. It's literally my number one of all time. Like,
What is?
About Schmidt.
Oh, About Schmidt. Okay.
Yeah, like it's like I said, it's too easy for me to take that. Now I just took it anyway because I just answered it. I'm going to take Nerdrovert Jason asked. He said, here as Paul in this movie as Paul or as Miles in Sideways, which is the better Giamatti performance?
Ooh.
And I'm going to still, I mean, Sideways is like top 10, top 20 all time for me. I adore Sideways too. I think that character's, the self-loathing that character has at, like, he clearly had a good life and then had an affair and kind of ruined that. And it has subsequently made him just so bitter and repressed and so full of self-loathing. And then he sees like the cartoonish buffoonery that is Jack when he spends time with Jack when they go out to wine country for the bachelor party. I mean, it's got to still be Miles for me, only because I mean, but I mean, we just talked about different ways that you can connect with Paul in this movie. So I mean, this is a performance I still absolutely love. I still connect with that character too. But with Miles, like, I think like I especially can connect to a lot of different times in my life when I have screwed something up and like, or like maybe something hasn't gone the way I wanted it to or whatever. And subsequently it like that shapes a part of who you are. And again, that's another reason why I just love Payne's films as much as I do. So yeah, still Miles and Sideways for me. But to be fair, I've also seen Sideways probably like 100 times compared to the one time I've seen this. So let me watch this every Christmas. I'll watch this because it's got to add it to the holiday movie rotation, like Gerald said. So we'll see.
We got an interesting question. A patron of the show, Chris Yaney, who did not recommend Angels with Dirty Faces, thank God. But, he asked something that's kind of interesting that I want to pick your brain about too. But he says, is it the Mandela effect making me think that I've seen this movie based on the plot synopsis? So I kind of get what he's saying there, though. Do you understand that? Because I mentioned Dead Poet Society at the top.
Yeah.
But I feel like these kind of like, I mean, the era for sure, but not necessarily even the era, just these movies where teachers are like making an impact in a young person's life, right? I mean, that's a story that's been told 100 times. I mean, hell, you could even say Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer, which I think was in the 90s or early 2000s. I mean, right? I mean, you hear it and you go, wow, how is this going to be different? But then you look at a movie like The Holdovers and it is different because of the performances, right?
This is boiling it down to a plot synopsis does this movie a disservice because this movie's not about its plot.
It's
what I mean, about the journey that these characters go on when they're in this setting, when they're doing this thing. If all you do is look at the plot of this movie and say, oh, I've seen this movie before. I've seen a movie where a teacher is reinvigorated by working with a student and vice versa. Like I mentioned Good Will Hunting. There's even a little bit of that
right
in here. Like going by the plot synopsis is an absolute disservice to this movie. This movie's all about you as an audience member sitting down either in a theater or sitting down at home or whatever. Michelle, please see this movie. I saw Michelle Dodo mention that she had
Yeah,
to
she didn't get
cancel
a
her
chance to
ticket.
see it. Yeah.
Like, it's all about the connection that you can form with these characters and the connections that they form with each other and the journeys that they go on. Like, that's what
Do you
this
want
kind of movie
to
is built for, not for the plot synopsis.
before we leave here? Do you want to touch on your thoughts on the movie? Came out on November 10th. I looked it up while we were talking earlier, and it
You
went
could
on to
also just look
streaming.
like it's been
Oh
behind
yeah,
my head the
it's right
whole
behind your
time, Gerald. It's been right here.
right behind your head there. I didn't have to Google it. And then it went on streaming on November 28th. So there was only 18 days of a wide release prior to streaming. What? I don't know. I scratch my head at that. If you're gonna do the day and date thing, then do that, like Five Nights at Freddy's did, right? Which made millions of dollars, and what people still went out for it and whatever.
It's highest grossing
But
horror movie of the year, wasn't it?
I know it was, yeah.
Yeah.
But why are you doing because it's a holiday movie too? So I don't know. I'm
Why
just
do it
kind of
earlier?
like baffled.
Yeah. Why not do
I'm
a little bit
baffled.
later release window? And why not leave it with a little bit longer of a theatrical run? I think it probably more of a studio indictment than anything else, because studio probably sees, like, I mean, it's this kind of movie's never going to light the box office on fire. Like, it's not going to have a big
Yeah.
wide release with 5,000-6,000 screens or whatever. It's going to have a limited release. It's going to play in limited markets for a lot. It's a festival film. It's an award season film. Like, it's not
Yeah.
something that maybe the general audience is necessarily going to roll out to a theater to see. So it's that kind of mentality from maybe a studio perspective where they get skittish and they're like, oh, well, we better jam it onto streaming as soon as possible because it's just not lighting the box office on fire, making us as much
Yeah.
money as we'd want. I mean, what could the budget have been for this movie? $6? Like,
I mean, it's not a lot.
it's not a high budget movie. I mean, the budget's going to be
Right.
all in the actor's salary, probably. But Paul Giamatti probably made more than the rest of the movie was like budgeted for.
Right, sure.
And I'm sure
All
this movie probably had like a really small, but yeah,
I don't know. It was just a strange. I don't know, because I sent you a DM.
it is
when
so
I found
weird.
out,
Yeah, you're right.
because I had bought my ticket to it, and then I sent you that DM, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just watch it on streaming. I mean, it's like 2 days after my theater. I ended up going to the theater, but
Yeah, it's
I,
really.
don't know, I just thought it was a weird. It was a weird timing.
Such a
I felt
strange thing. I like I said, I think that it's. And maybe like I'm not a studio numbers guy. I don't pay attention to these sorts of things enough. Maybe it's one of those kinds of things where a movie like this, because it's never going to light the box office on fire, maybe it's better to make it widely available on streaming platforms, like pretty readily, easy, because it's another way for the studio to make some more money. Like, maybe that's the smart business decision with a movie like this, where it's going to have a relatively limited budget. Probably, I don't know how it did, but like probably going to recoup a good portion of that through, box office and whatever. But
All right, I'm gonna pull up the rest of the year here, Nick, real quick as we're exiting. By the way, guys, the Golden Peas are coming up. I've been spending literally every minute of free time I have. I did my best of the year video edit. I got that out of the way. And I've been coming up with a preliminary ballot. So a lot of people will be getting that, and they will be coming up with what will ultimately be the nominees for the best of 2023. So look out for that in the next week or so. And then the main ballot will come out by the end of the year or the early part of January. So you can cast your vote for the best of 2023. And the Golden Peas, Brian Loisauce is coming back into the fold here.
get
Nick.
that god of
We're gonna
podcasting.
We're going to get him in here for a little bit, and I'm going to have you doing some shit whether you like it or not. The rest of this year, guys, I said it earlier, next week, Nick is going to talk to me about one of the craziest fucking films I've seen definitely this year, but maybe even ever, Saltburn by Emerald Fennell. Nick, do me a favor before we go into that review next week. Try not to watch or listen to any reviews or anything on it.
I've seen literally nothing about it anyway. So
Okay,
I
just
know
go
I know
into
only
this
what
movie.
like the very basic plot synopsis is, and I kind of
Okay.
forgot most of it anyway.
Please just go into that as blind as possible, and then let's talk about it.
It's
I'm
football
just
season,
curious.
Gerald. My entire news feed is all
What do you think?
football stuff right now. Like, I don't see anything else in my news feeds or anything like that.
So after we do Emerald Fennell Saltburn next week, we're looking forward to doing, hopefully we're going to cover Wonka this year, and then we're going to end the year by covering Rebel Moon from your boy, Zack Snyder, which will be
Which
dropping on
kudos to Netflix, because
Netflix.
I've been watching football all day, and I'd seen that trailer on football games all day. Netflix is marketing the heck out of that movie. Like, I mean, they must
Nice.
have spent a mint on it, so like they want it to be pretty successful. But
Sure.
I mean, yeah, like it's like Netflix is marketing the crap out of it. I've seen it I've seen it everywhere, like literally everywhere.
Let's get together next week, Nick, and let's talk about Saltburn. I'm going to record my portion. I'm going to be in a bathtub
In a bath, okay.
when
It's
I
cold,
do
cold bath, ice
when
bath. You'd pour some ice,
you'll
ice in there.
You'll know what I mean when you watch the movie. But I'm
All
going to
right.
be on camera on our video call next week, naked in a bathtub,
Oh,
which
good.
is not safe because this is all.
I assume
electrical
you're
shit.
naked from the waist down whenever we record, anyway. So
we'll discuss that next week. Until then, Nick, I love you, man. Thanks for discussing the holdovers with me, and have a good week, brother. We'll get back together next week.
yeah, love you, man. Peace out, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.